Despite living in the same state that Union Pacific is headquartered in, my fleet of armor yellow locomotives is rather small, but a mighty one nonetheless, and is exclusively AC 4400 CWs from Kato. There's 5714, a unit I've had for several years that's still in near mint condition, complete with a Digitrax sound system, 5780, which is a little more beat up, but also a good performer with an early Tsunami decoder, and then the odd one out, 5799. This is the one I've had the longest by far, and it absolutely shows. It originally belonged to my older brother, but at some point my toddler self, who had no idea what delicate models were, got a hold of it, and the rest is history. 5799 suffered dried-on glue, scratched paint, lost handrails, and lost dignity with it. The only saving grace was that mechanically, it still runs fairly well. But besides that, the engine has languished in storage as an example of why model trains have an age recommendation. Very recently, however, 5799's fortunes began to change. Over the summer, I started the gradual process of converting my engines to DCC using various decoders. While I was at it, I took a look at 5799 to see if it could get the same treatment. After all, its siblings were all DCC fitted, how hard could it be? Lo and behold, on the circuit board was an 8-pin socket for a decoder to fit into. This got me thinking further. If 5799 could be DCC fitted, and get a few of its missing parts back, maybe it could end up returning to service. 5780 isn't in pristine condition either. It's missing some parts and the shell isn't on completely. But even just the addition of some side handrails lifted the look of it tremendously. If there was a time to bring this unit back, it was now. 5799 would finally achieve the dream of every locomotive, to be restored and run on the main line. But let's be realistic for a second. I am by no means an expert in model train restorations. I imagine I'll be doing several things that the comments will scream at me not to do. All that said, I can't make 5799 look perfect cosmetically, but I've got to still try. While I removed as much of the dried glue as I could, there were some spots that were a little tougher. I tried several things on these, but none worked as I hoped. I had previously used a sharp blade to chip away at the glue, which was effective, but also ran the high risk of further scratching the paint. I tried to file it, but the concern of paint scratching remained, and it did not do as much. Supposedly, rubbing alcohol can eat away at dried glue, so I tried that also, but it wasn't much help either. So I got rid of as much glue as I could, to the point where it would no longer block the path of an HO scale crew. Someday I hope to get rid of the rest, but until then, this will have to do. That combined with the overall rough condition of the engine actually gave me an idea. When you look at my 5714 model, it looks great, doesn't it? That yellow is so vibrant and untouched. That's not accurate. Any UP railfan will know, just about every non-rebuilt AC-44 doesn't look like this anymore. They're dirty, they're grimy, their shields and flags are faded, and their yellow has become more of a cream. If I wanted to lift the look of my model, perhaps making it look more like its real-world counterparts could be a start. It's not exactly a lift, but it's accurate. It could provide a nice challenge, and hopefully make those blemishes of its past a little less noticeable. My first step was to try and fade its color using some white acrylic paint. This was a strategy I had tried a few times and hoped it would look alright. Well, from a distance it does. The fade kind of worked, but also left visible brush strokes in the process. There may be a better way to do this, perhaps an airbrush, but I'm not familiar with any of those, so I cut my losses and moved on. Another detail I wanted to try was painting the area around the radiator black, something that is present on the prototype, but none of the models. It took a few tries and a lot of masking tape, but I did get it to look decent. And even if some paint got outside where I wanted, I could scrape that off with ease. So the weathering could have gone worse, and this was just the first round. But what about the decoder? That was a major reason why I did this restoration to begin with. Thankfully, the decoder I needed was just an 8-pin from Digitrax, which isn't hard to find. By this point, I had shipped several of my engines with decoders, so I was kind of used to it, and soon got the decoder I needed from a train store. This was just a standard decoder, with no sound system or fancy lighting like the others have, but I wasn't too bothered by that. I like sound systems, but it isn't a necessity for me. The main goal was just to get my engines running on DCC, whether they made noise or not. And given how much else I had done to this engine, just seeing it run on DCC was good enough. Anyway, while this was the correct decoder, 5799 had never been DCC converted before, so I hoped for the best and tested it on the layout. You know what? I'll take that. I'll take that all day. It's DCC, baby! Success! 5799 was officially DCC powered, and even after all it had been through, it ran fairly decent. Now for what was possibly the trickiest part of this whole project: finding handrails. Good news is, Kato has an online parts store, and makes identifying what you're looking for pretty easy. Bad news, there were several parts to AC-44s in stock, but no handrails. I looked on many other online stores and got nothing every time. I even reached out to Kato via email, and though the response was a timely one, it also brought up nothing. The closest things were some Athearn handrails on eBay. While they weren't the same brand, I compared the handrail patterns between the two models, and they matched up nicely, so I figured it was close enough and ordered a set. None of the handrails for sale were the gray color I needed though. Mine in particular were CN&W green, so I knew I had to paint them up before applying them. The handrails arrived sooner than expected, and sure enough seemed to fit fairly well on 5799. It was looking better already. I went with a gray acrylic paint as the color, as while spray painting has its benefits, I'm more used to working with a brush, and was able to get a much closer shade of gray to the real thing. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to get all the handrails painted before one snapped. Shortly after that, I ended up getting sprue cutters, which made removing the rest of the handrails a breeze. I was also able to superglue the handrails back together after painting them, but I wish the separation wasn't as noticeable. If that wasn't enough of a dilemma, even when installed, the handrails gave me some trouble. Most of them went in fine, emphasis on most. There were a few that were just barely off from their accompanying hole, so I either had to fit them in at a weird angle or leave a weird hole in view. Alas, it was all worth it. For the first time in its long, miserable life, 5799 had handrails. By this point, there was one last step before I considered 5799 officially complete. Although I had done some weathering already, there was one other method I wanted to try. Many months ago, I purchased some weathering powders that were used to make engines and cars look run down and faded. The catch is, this powder has to be sealed on with a clear coat of spray paint, which I also bought a can of. I had already tried this on several of my cars, and while they came out pretty good for my first try, my inexperience with spray paint had me a little on edge. It was one thing if I messed up on a freight car, if I put on too much powder or sprayed too close or something. But on a locomotive that I just restored, that I would constantly be looking at, with multiple windows I had to be sure were masked, there was some more pressure involved. I knew I wanted to do this though, as it would truly make 5799 look like a real workhorse, with dirt toward the bottom and exhaust on the roof. It would complete the look I had worked toward. I just needed to build up the confidence in acting on it. I did some clarifying with several model railroaders more experienced than me, until finally, I brought my powder and models outside. Joining 5799 were several rail cars that would also get weathering treatment, as I figured it best to do them all in one go. I got some additional support here as well. Thank you very much for helping. With the first few cars finished and successful, I took a deep breath and got 5799 ready for spraying. And ladies and gentlemen, it is so back. There are quite a few things with this engine that could still be improved. I didn't get all of the glue removed, as mentioned. The weathering could have gone better in some spots, and there are a few more missing parts. However, for my first major locomotive project, this was an undertaking that I'm very glad I saw through, which included many firsts that have improved my model railroading experience. I mostly just wanted to get 5799 back on the main line, while making it a little less of an eyesore along the way. And I think I've met all of that. So I am very happy to welcome this engine back into regular service once more, even though I was the one who took it out in the first place, many years ago. But you know what? We got it solved now. The end. Happy ending for this engine. Welcome back, 5799.